Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another edition of Hospitality Recovery Live. It's 12 o'clock, it's our usual slot on Tuesday. Look, I've got next to me, I've got JBS, John Benson-Smith, back with me as a co-host. Hi, sir, how are you?
Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, got some good stuff in a minute. So, let me just talk you through. Welcome, first of all, to the people on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. We're going live based on Spotify and Google. Also, basically, guys, welcome to the people who listen to us on Last Man Standing, which is the podcast where we create this from. People who want to contact me, basically, you can contact me through LinkedIn, Nigel.Mann, M-A-N-N, or you can basically get me, which most people do, on Nigel.Mann@hospitalityrecovery.co.uk. Let me just repeat that for you for the podcast. Nigel.Mann@hospitalityrecovery.co.uk, and thank you to all the people that send me messages. Thank you. Yep, let me just talk you through. So basically, guys, we basically want you to come in and say hello, please. You know, those people who normally watch the show, basically come in and say hello, and we'll basically talk to you. Those people watching replay, by the way, just pop into the replay box. I know 40% of you watch it back on replay in America and stuff like that, so please come in, say hello, give us your location, and put it into replay. That'd be much appreciated. Just a quick warning, guys, the usual warning. There is a 3-second delay now on StreamYard, so, they've put three quite prominent, really. But, guys, if you are listening, basically, it is a live broadcast. Yeah, you may hear some of those Anglo-Saxon words that you don't want to explain to the kiddies. Those little people, so if you want to put your headpods in, go into another room, it is a live broadcast, just to let you know. So, State of the Nation, let me just basically talk you through the State of the Nation just for the podcast. So, what's been happening in hospitality this week? London, Essex, part of Hertfordshire is now going to Tier 3, that's 10.8 million people. Another 34 million people now will be in the toughest restriction, which is basically as of Wednesday. 61% of the population will be there. And that's in Tier 3. For those people who are not in hospitality, Tier 3 is a very high alert. Pubs and restaurants are closed, except for takeaway and delivery. And indoor entertainment, theatres, cinemas, bowling alleys must remain shut. The government basically will more than likely now review Christmas, as we've got a mutated virus that basically is going on every 7 days. News this morning, just for the podcast, is 370,000 people made redundant the last 3 months. That's 819,000 since the pandemic began. Brexit has basically come and gone, hasn't it? Yeah, so the talks continue. What will that mean for food prices? What will it mean for the labour market? And will prices basically go higher in the shops? Good news though, guys, people are basically going into hospitality and getting more investment into hospitality this week, so that's quite good news. Great, the vaccine's been rolled out, so well done to those sort of, those guys that basically developed that and rolling that out. Absolutely superb, and the first woman in Coventry started to roll that out. And good news is we've got over 100,000 signatures now for the hospitality minister. I think checking this morning it was 147,143. So, legal challenges in Manchester, pub basically sector are now starting to get heard in Parliament, but it's tough trading out there. Just for clarity, obviously just shown across the bottom there, that sort of stuff that's been coming through really, that basically from the government and basically how they're helping us. Guys, it's a very interactive show, just set the show up so you know the score by now. Put a cue before your questions, before I talk to John Benson-Smith. Basically, guys, we want lots of interaction before we go through. But let me just basically bring some people in. Let me just say hello to a few people who we got on today. Jason McEwen. So Jace, hi, how are you? Just get my screen up. Good news for everyone. Awesome session. Welcome, Jason. Dawn. Hello, Nigel. John from Dawn Holdings in Manchester. One of your friends, JB. Anthony Rose, hello everyone. Anthony, how you doing, sir? Hope you're feeling better today. Greetings from Stefan Solomson. Greetings, Nigel and all. Greetings, Stefan. How are you? Matt Umbleton, hello. All liking the wallpaper. It's back this week, Matt. I must admit, it is back. The green screen's gone. The wallpaper's back by popular demand. Guys in, etc. So, first of all, let me get back to my screen. Cool. So let me introduce my guest. Yeah, my co-star, Mr. John Benson-Smith. First of all, sir. Yeah. Hang on, John. Let me just take these off. Oh God, it's all going wrong today, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So let me bring him in, Mr. John Benson-Smith. There you go, sir. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good, Nigel. Good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Hopefully, we won't have another Ken Dodd.
No.
Where we're here at 5 to 12 at night, still talking about a myriad of.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, you know, sort of, what was it, 5 weeks ago when we started that 20 sort of list you had, yeah? And I think we're on number 2 or 3, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, it's one of those moments, isn't it? Yeah, it's always great content with you, JBS, that basically we've always got something to say, always got something to discuss. So it's great, isn't it? Yeah. Right, let's get on to today's subject then. So today's subject is about becoming famous, yeah, and all of that, really. So, JBS, I've got one question for you. I mean, basically, you know, for me, it's all about, you know, sort of restaurants and restaurant A over restaurant B and becoming, you know, sort of getting the product out there and getting the service out there. But how do you become famous? Over to you, sir.
Well, hopefully over the next 10 minutes or 4.5 hours, I'm going to give you some kind of a few tips and hints, if that kind of makes sense. But I think before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of that, the first thing I want to say is that I appreciate that COVID-19 and has caused enough damage, and there's a lot of angry, fed up people, and the industry is in a devastating position. But I really want to talk about recovery and positive and what we can do, because there are a lot of very good stories out there that are real from a great number of people that are actually doing pretty well. And some of those people don't always want to kind of share the wealth of the changes they've made to their business, because I think some of them are frightened of being seen as being a bit smug, or the fact, you know, they've got some success. But maybe we'll leave that for another day, Nigel. But if you're okay, I want to kind of talk about the fame. So becoming famous for all the right reasons, and you know, for it to be genuine, probably before we get to that bit, need some structured thinking. So I'm going to do a little bit on brand. Okay, now I am not a London-based kind of smart marketeer or PR or branding agency. I have no idea. I'm just kind of going back to the last 45 years or something of industry. And I have worked with a lot of very good branding agencies and PR people, and occasionally still do for my sins. But this is some of my own kind of unique thoughts. So I think it's about that, standing back and taking the time now, where in theory we have probably more time than ever to be able to think and review our businesses, to be quite selfish and to get out on the boardroom table or the kitchen table your business and the facts and what it is trying to be, and probably being quite clear that the rules and the games it's changed, isn't it? We were probably doing ballroom dancing, you know, in early 2020, and now we're probably doing a mix of Rambo and Mad Max. The last time I said that, someone said, who's Mad Max and who's Rambo? But you know what I'm trying to say. So
show your age, mate.
the first thing I would say is beware of killing off sales teams or sales activity, and also I would be really concerned about killing off marketing or killing off PR or promotions. I think having that ability to reach out and shout is really important. And it's that whole thing about, hello, we're here, we still love you, customer. You know, because customers, rightly or wrongly, they will presume, if they don't hear, that you're closed or you're shut, because they've been insulated in their whole world. And they've obviously had an opportunity to spend more time in their homes and enjoy that investment, and to spend more time probably cooking and recipes and, you know, refurbishing their lounges and their patios and all the rest of it. So, and then some of them, you know, are being quite heavily into, you know, home deliveries and takeaway, and some people are doing quite well about that. So it's going to take a bit of kind of thinking. And I think in 2021, hopefully it will become a noisy marketplace. You know, you want to be heard, if that kind of makes sense.
Yep.
And the way I always look at it is that becoming famous is about making a noise, but for genuine reason. To do that, you've got to get yourself sorted, regardless of what you are and what you portray and what your tone is and what your beliefs and what message you're giving out. But sometimes in business, people say, "Oh, we haven't got time to do PR, or we haven't got time to do social media." I never forget last year visiting a place where there was 3 or 4 staff stood there with an assistant manager, lovely people. "Oh, we haven't got time to do our own social media. We have to get an outside company to do it." And at the same time as talking to me, they were posting their own stuff for themselves, which I kind of get. So I think having the time to kind of focus and plan things out and to make a noise is really, really important. And I'll tell you a very quick story. Probably about 10 years ago, I was rather mixed up about my business and what was I and what was I trying to achieve, because a number of my associates over the years, they'd formed consultancies very different to mine, with a view to them having a catering, restaurant, food service, consultancy, whatever that meant, and to actually eventually selling it. Where mine was very different, and I used to be called something very different. My consultancy used to be called 3soupsinabowl.com, to such an extent where the Inland Revenue and the VAT came to visit me one day together because they thought I actually ran a factory making soup. But my point being that, the name I had, people didn't understand actually what I did or what my services were. But I paid a very expensive, very exclusive, high-class marketing brand agency a lot of money to actually go away and come back to me with what my business should be called. And I wrote out 100 different names regardless what was I trying to do. And do you know what they came back and said? The best name for your company should be John Benson-Smith. So what I'm saying is I went in all sorts of bloody directions, and actually I became my own kind of business, which was using my own name. And I think sometimes having that Ron Seal approach of it does what it says on the tin is really important. But a brand to me is a personality of your business. It's often a badge, but sometimes when you wear a badge, your employees don't always understand the badge unless you're very, very clear about what kind of message that badge is trying to give out. And just because you wear a badge doesn't mean say you actually believe it. But I think a brand is about portraying the gang and the tribe and the group, if that kind of makes sense. If you think about it in football terms, it's what the badge is, the message you're giving out, and how different you are to other people. And on occasions, you will find that within branding, there's something called a brand without a brand or white label. That's because you're morphing as somebody else, if that kind of makes sense. It's also about how you want to be perceived. And your brand can be a person, a business, an individual. But I think what's really important with a brand is that you need to have a story to tell about what you are and where you've been and where you're going to go. And particularly if it's true, that tends to kind of work. I think I mentioned in a couple of shows before in the past, if your business was a box on the supermarket shelf, what message would it be trying to give out? I suppose it's a bit like washing powder. What would your colours be? What's your message? That whole thing, and your design and your symbol. But branding means different things to different people, and I'm aware that some people will sit there and look at me as if I've got 5 heads, or they don't kind of get what I'm trying to say. So your business persona, your theoretical mask, it's ready to performance. It's the stage thing. It's your character, and it's probably your clothes, physically as well as mentally, giving out that whole brand thing. So Nigel, if we look at coffee with our industry, and we kind of, I'm gonna put you on the spot for once, which I probably need to do more often. But if I throw at you some coffee brands, yep. I want to understand what's the first thing that springs into your head and what you'd migrate to. So if I say Starbucks, what does that mean?
Starbucks for me is basically, I mean, let's face it, Starbucks is a lifestyle, I think, for me. Yeah, it's
wow.
it's one of those brands that basically, perhaps the coffee's the same,
yeah.
But the Arabica bean, the sort of Robusta bean, it's exactly the same, but it's a lifestyle, isn't it? It's a sort of look at me, I've got a Starbucks, I've got a Bucks, yeah.
To my wife, she thinks it's an American milk bar, and it's very interesting how people have. Okay, so if you're the choice between Costa, Starbucks and Caffè Nero, which one do you gravitate to? Why, and what's their different values?
Yeah, it's very much of a muchness, isn't it? I mean, basically, a Starbucks. I mean, I only say that because basically I put some of those brands in, as you know. I've also some Costa brands as well.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's just the decor, isn't it? I mean, basically, they're all lifestyle brands. They're all basically, you know, you're all buying a coffee with a badge on it that says, "Look at me on my desk, on my car, and my sort of."
Or is
You
it
know,
ones that you're familiar with, ones that you feel at home with, ones you feel more comfortable?
yeah,
But you start throwing Illy and do Egberts, or if I say Kenco to you, or let me throw a really good one, Maxwell House, Lavazza,
but
What I'm saying is, that's which are the ones you gravitate to. Where do you feel most comfortable? And they're all giving off different messages. That kind of makes sense.
yeah,
So
but I think your Maxwell House though, John. I think basically once you go to those sort of brands, I mean, my mum used to have that, didn't she? You know, it's one of those old fashioned. Dab Egberts is probably the same, isn't it? You know, we've had these new brands, we've had these new lifestyle brands. It's sort of Costa, Starbucks, and you know, you sort of Cafe Nero and all those sort of brands that quite clearly have brought that coffee on, haven't we? I mean, coffee before.
And sometimes you wonder, how was there a gap in the market, or why didn't Kenco become a Starbucks? But hey, listen, I think it's, to me, typically when you're building a brand. Typically within the food service, restaurant, catering market, whatever the hell that's called, if we're formulating a brand new concept, I have 2 flip charts, and on one flip chart we put all the things we want to be, and on the other flip chart all the things we never want to be. Makes sense? So that we're quite clear on our brand and what our values are going to be, because until we're clear on what we're trying to replicate, to hell with the fame, because it begins to kind of collapse, if that kind of makes sense. So I think pinpointing a space and a gap in the market is really important, and understanding, as we said before, the market, the trends, your competitors, where do you fit in, and what's your customer segmentation. Big words, I know, but I look at these things in a really, really simple kind of fashion. It's who's a competitor, what the hell's happening out there, and probably where's the market going to go, which is important. I think, you know, if your team are confused, I've had this before. Many years ago, I was the principal of a 1,000-year-old castle, which we took over, which was a very tough, difficult business to run. And we had a really successful little cafe that was full of old ladies, and they were lovely old ladies. And so often I used to go and have scones with them and cups of tea. We used to turn over 20 grand a week in a tiny little old-fashioned castle cafe under, you know, this thing was in a derelict state and it was packed. So I decided, you know, because I was a clever clogs in those days, to renovate this and turn it into a very nice swanky pizza place. Yeah, well, you can imagine what happened. My 20 grand a week went to 6 grand a week, and I had to spend a fortune on actually renovating it. But the one thing I missed in the title of my new brand was the word pizza. And interestingly, we used to employ a number of retired policemen that became our concierge. They used to wander around giving tours of the castle, and it was fantastic. Yeah. And then never forget, on a number of occasions, my concierge guys saying to people, "Oh, and this is our Greek taverna." Because the one thing I failed to do was actually explain to my staff what the hell that brand was, which goes back to your values. So if the staff were concerned, then no wonder the customers were. So I think with regards to your brand, it's about being bold and daring and being creative. It's what differentiates you and sets you apart from the competitors. What's your unfair advantage? What are you bringing to the party that's different? And I think whatever you do with regards branding, you've always got to have a consistent tone of voice. In other words, what your website says in your social media and all the rest of it needs to join up. You know, I was in a business recently where it advertised itself as being lovely and family and friendly, and the fact that everything, you know, they'd use your first name and everybody loves you and all the rest of it. I went there and it was the most aggressive, rude experience before in my life. So that's about giving a message out and a brand that actually isn't kind of fulfilled. But you know, those things I think are really important. And it's really interesting, you know, going back to the thing about the tribes. I spent a lot of time, probably about 18 or 19 years within football stadium. I worked for all sorts of different clubs, but commonly I get involved with tenders. And I never forget, it was probably the same 3 or 4 contract caterers that came along for the tender. And you could, before I even could, you know, identify with them, the way they used to walk, the way they used to speak, the language they used, the shoes they used to wear, the haircuts, and I ain't joking, you could spot one contract caterer from another because it became part of the brand, how they behave. One lot would carry briefcases, one, wouldn't. It's a whole new kind of way of moving on. But I'll tell you a couple of stories, and I'm going to get a move on towards the fame thing. So again, in the same business, in this 1,000-year-old castle, we built an orangery. Well, the orangery had been there for thousands of years, but it was actually in a derelict state. So we spent a fortune rebuilding this orangery where people could sit in this restaurant and overlook the gardens. And I typically went off in a massive tangent to oranges and about fruit and all the rest of it. And then south of France and sunshine and the whole style of food would be light and all the rest of it. And I decided I was probably going to call the restaurant Bergamo. And for those of us that understand, Bergamo is a strain of an orange. Now, thank God I kind of walked around and kind of gave this kind of idea to a few people. It was in a county which will remain nameless. But in Yorkshire, people thought, I didn't call it. I was thinking of, I had a focus group. Well, focus group was walking around talking to customers, really. I said, hey, we're thinking of calling our new restaurant Bergamo. And every single one of them said, you're serving burgers. So whatever you're going to be called, I think is really important. It goes back to the whole thing. So becoming famous, that's what we're here to discuss. So first question to everybody would be, is PR or is all PR good PR? That's the first thing I'm going to ask anybody. And that question goes around a lot. A lot of PR agencies may say that all PR can be good PR. I'd probably disagree. I mean, if I was being naughty, if I showed my backside over a bridge on the M62 this evening, it'd probably get lots of PR, wouldn't it? Yeah. Or it would get everybody's attention, but it probably wouldn't be in the kind of vein of what one's required. So I think you've got to be really careful regards gimmicks and naffness or anything that's silly, because it can be misconstrued, and you've got to be quite precious about your credibility. But I think it's really important to also think about implications. I mentioned to you about my umpteen years in Stadia, where I became typecast. So you've got to really, really think that thing through, and particularly in a marketplace where everybody's bleating on and bashing on about, social media, and there's so many awards and there's a lot of activity. If you're being tough on people, before COVID, cookery schools were very important. Cookery demonstrations were important. There was a lot of them, chefs demonstrating food shows, farmers markets, county shows, and a lot of chefs, that have been, influenced by their grandmothers and spent a lot of time within Michelin. I don't have a problem with that. But if you're not careful, it can become the same story as everybody else, and it all becomes a muchness. So I think finding the reasons to become famous and things that you can promote, the things that you do, and genuinely the things you're really good at, I think is really, really important. So making and creating those points of difference, I think is really, what I can't do today is say to people, hey, tell them what your business is and I'll look at the point of difference. That's something that's got to come internally from the business. And I think refining and developing your key products. For example, when I was in Manchester in 1992, we used to put plastic rubber ducks in the bathroom. And under the beds, we would put a tiny little tent card that said, ha ha, Mr. Michelin and AA inspector, we even clean underneath here. Now that in itself, those two simple points, amongst the team we worked with, that was a message to say, our brand is something that isn't going to be boring, predictable 4 or 5-star hotel. So we had, when you took the cloche off your coffee, so we'd fill a cloche upside down with sweeties and then put the plate on top and turn it that way around. So when the customer thought, what's that? Took the cloche off, this cascade of Smarties and sweets poured everywhere. So that fitted in with the rubber ducks, that fitted in with taking the mickey out of the Michelin inspector, etc. That was part of building that brand. That then gave us the point of difference, and that then enabled us, if you follow me, to actually get our customers to understand, oh, we'll like it there. And they used to talk about things. So lots of places were doing kind of a gourmet evening, a gastronomic dinner. We did an evening of Scalextric. We did an evening of 1970s where we all wore wigs and we did crazy food because we were just a bunch of loonies. That in itself began to make that business famous, but it was genuine, if you understand what I'm trying to say. But I would say probably the biggest thing that we need to focus on is training. Now, I tend to find, Nigel, from my experience, a lot of businesses I talk to about training, they think about fire and first aid, or they talk about allergens or food safety. It's not a lot of the time do people really talk about customer engagement and customer service or making the customer love you, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think that Fame starts with giving customers a fantastic experience. And back in the day, if we did 64 covers and I'd want to see 25 comment cards, and I wanted to be really sure that people had a fantastic experience. So I think the whole role play and the training and the correctment and the mentoring and the tutoring about smile, teeth, welcome, engagement, product knowledge, loving your customer, understanding it's a special time for them, that in itself, whilst it isn't a kind of a wow out the bag, we became famous or something daft, it's a really good kind of start. So I think your best PR and fame can be delivering excellent services and products. And I would say for the business principle, being rest assured that people go away, really, really happy indeed, if that makes sense. So sat here now, I'm not going to say to you, here's 10, 15, 20 reasons. We can think of the promotions, Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and all those things. We can look at, all the Christmassy things. But I think if it's going to be deep-seated, it's about getting profiled for the genuine reasons. We could do a session on press releases. We could do on all those things. But I think it's starting at home with what you are, what's your message. What I would say with COVID, Nigel, it's probably a great time within reason to rethink what you are and what you could be and what you may be, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I was going to say, I love you coming on the show, JB, because you basically, I just have to sit here and basically listen to the actual gold coming out. You know what I mean? So let's just take it.
Just now.
No, I thought I fell asleep then, mate. You know what I mean? Yeah, no problem.
As a leader, you've got to stimulate your team to rethink everything. Cool. As Gary Cook used to say to me, the same thinking, the same mentality, the same ingredients, the same bloody thing. The end result will be the same. Now we've got to have that revolution, Nigel.
Yeah. JB, so let's just go over to some of the people that basically just asked some questions. So Tony's asking, basically, Tony Rose said, I think people are now talking more interest in the ethos behind the organisations. Yeah, I think he's quite right, isn't he? Yeah.
I think that's really true. It's got to be genuine. If it's plastic or artificial, you're going to get found out.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you've got to bang the drum about those things are important. It's no longer a PR gimmick. Well said, Anthony.
Yeah, you've got to be authentic, haven't you? You've got to have a sort of presence and sort of, story behind the sort of brand, haven't you? Yeah, Definitely. The Starbucks thing, if you read that book, basically go and have a look, yeah.
And if you're saying to everybody, we're going to be vegan, we're organic and fresh food, if you start doing other things, or as a leader, if you're not using, if you're talking about, I don't want to use single-use plastic and you're sat there drinking out of it or you're promoting it, then your employees will learn that you're actually, what's the word beginning with BULL or something?
Do not, JBs. Yeah, you get me taken off the air. Yeah, cool. I mean, basically, and that is for your own brand as well, doesn't it? I mean, quite clear. What you talk about and what you say on LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that. Perhaps Facebook's a bit different, but certainly on LinkedIn, from a professional standpoint, you've got to basically be your own brand. Yeah.
So if you go back 25, 30 years, it was called advertising. It was a massive, horrible cost. Yes. Now the rules have changed. If you're smart and clever and you've got yourself sorted out to what you want to be doing and what you're saying and it works, then it's a lot cheaper and surely it should be easier, or not?
Yeah. I mean, totally. I mean, this show goes out to sort of 3,500 people by the time they listen to it, through the podcast and stuff like that. So it's great stuff. What's Jason saying? Jason's saying, totally agree with this. The old classic of change your words to change your world. Yeah.
Yeah. Well said, Jason.
Any thoughts on that? Yeah, sort of.
Fantastic. I love that.
He's totally right, isn't he? You know,
And
it's the old classic, isn't it? You know, it's just,
if you try
you
and
know,
be the preacher as the leader, you've got to live by what you say, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Andy was saying, yes, I also agree with John on that. I mean, it was something that basically you said previous. I don't know what he agrees on, but, you know, he obviously agrees on that. Gainer, brand. The promise of an experience is consistently executed at every customer touch point, not just the marketing blurb. Yeah.
So just a point on Gainer's point. Hello, Gainer. We wrote to 200 conference organisers saying to them, what's the 20 things you bloody hate about your food and beverage experience? And all of them said, wow, you're the first person that's ever asked us what we hate about our conferences. So you then rectify all those problems, in theory, cough, cough. I'll tell you what, you're going to have a better tomorrow because you've listened, you understood, and you're going to execute change. Yes? Don't park my car half a mile away in the rain. The concierge stands there and drags your bags in at 10 to 6 in the morning. Your room's not set up. You know, it's that whole thing about think as a customer, isn't it?
And she's quite right, isn't she? I mean, Gainer's absolutely right there. You know, it's not just about marketing. It's not just about flashy adverts and sort of, you know, spending loads of money on TV and sort of glossy magazines. Yeah. It's about the front office people, isn't it? It's about the waiter. It's about the waitress. It's about knowing John Benson-Smith likes a decent Malbec. He likes his table in the restaurant. You know, he likes room number 47 with, you know, feather down pillows. It's that, isn't it? I mean, quite.
It's called recognition. You know? It's called someone in my horrible world of ingrowing toenails and my credit card and COVID. Someone cares. Someone loves me. Therefore, I'm going to give you my money and feel happy because you bother about me. It's about that, isn't it? Isn't that about hospitality? Hospitable.
Yeah, it is. And we were talking this just before we come on here. It's about feelings, isn't it? It's about how somebody makes you feel. You know? When you walk out that restaurant, it's a case of basically, let's face it, service is okay. It's not good enough anymore. Yeah, you know, service is all about, you know, survival. Let's face it. You know, it's all about basically it's how you make people feel. Yeah, you know, it's the teeth, it's the smile, it's the sort of knowing full well that base that knowledge is there. You're quite right there, Gainer. I think, though, you know, absolutely right. It's not just about flashy adverts.
Yeah.
Bit of a tournament. Might have to look over the top. Oh, yeah. There you go. We'll have to look over the top of this one. I'll take it off in a minute. Yeah. You also go to look at your brand from the outside. Ensure makes sense to look at it as a message of your brand coming across correctly.
Thank you, Andy.
Don't get lost inside your business. How that makes sense.
Andy's a very experienced guy. Has a very good business. He ain't stupid. He understands. And I think the use of focus groups, which they use a lot in retail, or what I call talking to people, I think is really important because often you go off in the sunset with some cuckoo idea that sounds great, but actually your customers just look at you like you got 5 heads.
Yeah, we've all done that, haven't we? We've all basically, you know, designed a horse and come out with a camel. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Or a zebra.
We think it's absolutely. We think it's great around the table, and then we take it out there, don't we? Take it to the guest, and the guest goes, "No, this is absolutely crap. We don't like it." You know, it's just how many times have we done that? We've gone back to, you know, did we ask the customer? No, we didn't. You know, so that's absolutely important to look outside and basically look through there. Let's bring some more people on. So, top actors never want fame. They want to be the best entertainers, deliver the best products. So they train. It should be the same in business, surely. Yeah.
John, I know John. Yeah, and John and I often have a kind of a 2-hour bloody phone call at 5:30 in the morning, and he's full of. I love that. I get your point. However, unless you get in the market and start making a noise and become famous, whatever that word means, you won't have any of the rest because you won't have any business. So you're correct, and it needs to come genuinely.
Yeah, the thing that basically train there is the is the key, isn't it? Yeah, you know, it should be the same in business, surely.
It's the mentoring and tutoring. If we put half as much effort as we do into our food, into our customer care, understanding them and talking and listening to them, you know, and taking our employees on a journey of betterment, that's the only way, you know, which I see the future.
Yeah, I think you're quite right there. Jason says, John Benson, yes, just agreeing with the previous comment. Yeah, okay. In business as in life itself, this Andy Richards again, sure you never stop learning. Yeah, he's absolutely right, isn't he? Yeah, Andy? Yeah, you know, I mean, basically it's all about learning, isn't it? It's all about basically, you know, and we talked about this in another show, basically it's about being brave, isn't it? Yeah, it's about having the courage, you know?
But it's also about having those kind of ideas in your head. Like, I mean, you know, I've always tried to get close to my sales team within the businesses I've worked in, because I realised If we were fanning around with a little fouetté of wild mushrooms, that's fine. But without the business coming in, there'll be no mushrooms. So, for example, we used to commonly be naughty. We'd get a big taxi, and my sales team would jump in a taxi, and we'd go and spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes in 10 different hotels in the location, all our competitors, and trying to work them out and trying to look what they were doing and could we be smarter and better. And that whole thing about leadership infecting your business with change and fresh ideas, it's not optional.
Yeah, and I suppose going back to the coffee one that you asked me before, I mean, God, we grew up with basically a jug of coffee sitting on a hot plate that would burn there and go like
10 hours.
And taste like crap,
Yes.
wasn't it? It's absolutely awful, yeah. And now, basically, I mean, what's changed there is basically, I suppose, we've got theatre, haven't we? Yeah, we've got the person who's basically the barista there that basically comes in and says, Mr. Mann, how would you like your coffee? Extra shot, God knows what. We listen to the smells, the sort of, the coffee smell as soon as you walk in. The barista who basically knows you and just makes it and calls out your name, God knows what. They love all that. So, and we've gone from a little pot on the stove, on the hot plate that burns to death and quietly gone through. So, cool, Gainer saying, yes, it's the heart of, it's all about the heart of hospitality. You're absolutely right, aren't you? Yeah, it's about basically, it's about being hospitality. That's what hospitality is all about, isn't it? Yeah, and I guess basically, John, I need to ask you about this. Is we see some good operators, don't we? And we see some bad ones at the moment. We see those guys that basically just want your money and basically want to make it work, want to give that good service. And then on the backside of that, we see what I call is a transitional service that just basically it just operates. Yeah, it's tasteless. It's faceless.
Well, it's a bit like an ATM, isn't it? You kind of put your thing in and you do this and it comes out and that's it. Some people are quite happy with that, but other people don't. I would suspect in the future that people probably won't go and eat out 6 times or 8 times a month. They'll go out twice. I think one thing that COVID taught us all, I mentioned this before, was you can do a lot within your own house. And if you look at retail supermarkets, which we all tend to think are in another world, they are beginning to take over our patch because they're smart and they're clever. People are able now to replicate, that the kind of essence of restaurants in their own houses. You've got the different tiers, but people can come around and eat and friends if that's possible. And why go out to a restaurant? Or if a restaurant's out there, it probably needs to be an expert and specialist, but it doesn't have to be professional as such. In other words, just by smiling, all right, darling, do you want an extra thousand on your fried egg? That whole kind of, she likes me, and that fried egg, the £4 fried egg bap's great, and the smile's there, and see, it's next week, darling, and do you want your tea topping up? That to me would mean so much than this transactional world. But we're all different, aren't we?
You're right. I said before, it's about feelings, isn't it? I mean, there's an article out today actually that says basically the home market that you just discussed there, delivery market, was 27% before lockdown, 40% during lockdown, and it's still maintained at 35% basically after lockdown. Yeah, so it just shows that home market. As you know, with Market Kitchen, all that, it's sort of growing. Talking about that.
I was talking to a guy this morning on text, which my fingers are that big. I end up pressing, 4 or 5 letters at the same time. That was saying to me that out the back of his pub and restaurant, this is a guy that used to work for me. He's an absolute star. I love him to bits. And and I always take the time out for people that contact me, even if it was 30 years ago, because I remember what it was like when nobody would try and help me. And he had the back of the pub was a great big nasty store full of all sorts of, can I use the word crap? All sorts of crap with piles of wood and rubbish, and this was broken. And, during COVID, again, he's had the time to think and look at his business and reevaluate it. He emptied all the crap out, put some tables and chairs in, and decided, because it's in Yorkshire, that he was going to theme this around après-ski. So he got all sorts of old knackered skis in and decorated with all sorts of rubbish and stuff, and then only opened at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, with candles and whatever, and only did a blackboard menu. So there was little stock holding. Everything on there was seasonal. And I tell you what, he did 300 covers the other day.
Wow.
And the space was already there. He had the inkling to rethink his business model because of the pressures. That's where it is the choice between the sheep and the wolves.
Yeah. We talked about this before, haven't we? Quite clearly, it's about having the guts and the courage to go for it as well, hasn't it? To change your business model.
Who cares? Get it wrong and learn, and get the people that are with you and take them on the journey of change and improvement. But I think the whole thing about home delivery and about takeaways and even ready meals locally, or even frozen food, I think this isn't something that you should discard when and if hopefully we get back to any kind of normality. This is something that needs to stay with us. It's about promoting your business in a box.
Okay, JBiz, we're up to 40 minutes. You okay to do the next 15 minutes or so? Yeah. Otherwise it turns the Ken Dodd show again. You know what I mean? So, all right, let's back through these. Yeah, so I know what you like. Yeah, the whole journey and experience from point of booking to leaving to the customer's eyes. Yes, says Jason. He's absolutely right, isn't he? Yeah. It's good about thinking before that as well. It's about thinking before the customer gets there. That's your brand. Yeah. It's about basically looking at the phone.
But Jason's right. You've got to actually want to do that genuinely. Yes. In other words, you've got to want to question. It's like you want to fasten a video camera on a customer's head and let them play back how it was, when they went in the loos and this wasn't right and that, but also the wonderful things as well. Because you've got to find excuses to criticize, but more so, you've got to find excuses to praise people and say, that was fantastic, brilliant, I love the colour of your sausage under the grill.
Yeah. And I think you're quite right. I think it's a consistent message, isn't it? It's that consistent message from the start right to the very end. It's about having a consistent brand, whichever touch point. I mean, Gaynor talked before about sort of marketing, and that's absolutely right. But it's about basically touching every point, coming through and making sure. So Jason's got a valid point. Thanks for that, Jace. LinkedIn user, by the way, you need to go to the top and tick the StreamYard button. I don't know who you are, but we'll read it out anyway. Memorable customer service comes from understanding your customer, making that customer journey very best it can be for them. Make your customer experience famous.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's what JB is talking about today. It's about basically making your customer service and making it famous. It's about being different as well. It's about having that sort of differential that makes quite clearly you different from your competitor. Otherwise, you just become the same boring restaurant, high streets, and it just becomes the same, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's about your staff or your employees or your colleagues, what you can call them. Let them taste the food.
Yeah.
Don't penny pinch. Let them experience the restaurant. Let the receptionists stay in the bedrooms so they know what they're selling, isn't it? I mean, that's really important, I think.
Yeah. Let me try and get some more people on. So Jason says, cascade your knowledge and life experiences to your colleagues.
Exactly.
I think he's absolutely right there, isn't he? We all see these managers that basically, take all the praise and God knows what, but this is about giving your life experience. John, you've got 40 years in this job, I've got 35. So, we've all seen it, all done it, basically, without being sort of pig-headed about it. But it's about passing your knowledge onto, and I think new experiences there is absolutely right, isn't it? I'm one. I've certainly learned a load in the last 6 months since I've been at home, podcasting and doing live performance, live broadcasts and stuff like that.
I think we need to do a show about all the successes. There's a lot of successes out there that people don't want to talk about. There are so many fantastic things that happen, things that we can all learn and share about what is going to help and make us have a better tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think basically people don't like talking about successes because it comes a bit sort of, a bit sort of trite, doesn't it? As a bit sort of, look at me, I'm doing well. But there are people that are generally doing well out there, Successes in the industry and recovery, hospitality recovery. That's what we call this show. That's what we want to bring it on for. So
you've got to have the energy, hopefully next year, to be able to come out the ground like a maniac and lead your business forward. Somehow, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, you've got to be different. You've got to have the courage. You've got to have the knowledge, and you've got to have the skills. I mean, you were saying the other week, there's a few grey-haired guys that quite clearly now are being taken on the business because quite clearly, they've got the knowledge, they've got the experience, they've done it all before. So people are strategizing now to basically make it work. So
it is. It's like having Dad or the Godfather or some kind of. In the Middle East, you would call it an elder. In the Middle East, the elders are held in such high esteem. If you have grey hair, people will shut up and just listen to you because you have the knowledge. I'm not saying that isn't the case in this country, but it isn't always the case. Who cares as long as we're able to prosper and get into a better place somehow? And it isn't going to be having. imagine putting into your Thermomix Brexit and then throwing COVID-19 into it. This is the biggest challenge we're probably ever going to face ever.
Yeah, yeah, and you're quite right. I think, I mean, JB, you get a lot of consultancy. I still get a lot of phone calls from my consultancy as well, saying, "Nigel, come give us a hand." And I think more and more phone calls are going to come through, aren't they? Yeah, I mean, they're already ringing off the line now, but quite clearly, I think we get more of that. But yeah, watch this space. David Irvine agrees one thing that gets overlooked is we need to recruit the right people that share the behaviours and not 2 arms and 2 legs. Yeah, warm and breathing. Yeah, I think he's quite right.
That's about profiling and searching and selecting. Totally. Yeah. Really important.
It's about having the right people as well, isn't it? I mean, the industry is absolutely changing for hospitality, let's face it, new revenue streams, new sort of dark kitchens, market kitchen that we were talking about just before we come on air. The sort of success of that, and sort of, chefs, working 37 hours a week, just fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. So, it's all that. It's about, you're quite right, Anthony. I mean, Anthony's in L&D. So he's basically talking about, sort of recruitment, getting the right people, getting the right behaviours, to make the team. So that's what we're talking about there.
Well, it's no different to football, is it? It's surrounding yourself by the right people and the right skills and abilities.
Yeah. But says Anthony Rose training, absolutely right.
Now, sorry, just back to Bert. He has a fantastic company that does vending, but this is not vending as we used to know it, Nigel. This is unattended vending. Very, very smart, clever way. So let's not just sideline vending into a little box. I mean, food to me is a broad spectrum of all sorts of things, and if it's a great product and the customers enjoy it, let's reconsider that.
Yep. Let me just bring on a couple of more. John says, great show, guys. Thank you, John. Thank you. Thanks for that. Read the home market. That's why the customer experience is vitally important. Within that, the customer journey. To understand it, influence and bespoke it, make it special, make it something they can't get at home or anywhere else. Yeah, well, absolutely right. Yeah,
right. If the food you get, my mother can cook, with all due respect. I hope she's not watching. And if the service is, okay, we've got an issue. But I think, Nigel, you said it 100 times. Service to customers is more important now than probably the food. The food, I can probably buy it and reheat it or do whatever, and it'll be all right. I say it 100 times. Go to Marks and Spencer's, get one of their meals, put it on a nice Vilroy plate and fanny around with it, make it look lovely. You can get away with it. But if the member of staff's chewing gum, they're not interested, they don't want to be there, they haven't been trained, they don't know what it's about, that's going to cause us an issue. We don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, the service for me is absolutely vital. It's vital for survival these days. And, quite clearly, has to be right, has to be memorable, has to be basically ingrained, and you want your customers to come back to your restaurant, and your repeat business rather than going to restaurant B down the road. Quite clearly, it's survival, isn't it? It's about.
But if you go back to Gainer's point, knowing Gainer, if I go there on a Friday night and have a great experience, we've loved ourselves, it's been fantastic. It's not illegal for a member of staff to say, how about me making an appointment or how about me, making a booking for you in 2 weeks' time? I'll pencil it in at 7:00.
Yeah.
And it's that whole, when someone's had a great breakfast in a hotel and you know that they're staying for 3 nights, you start to say, I'll pop the dinner menu on your table for you to have a look at. Am I being stupid? You've got to, you've already got the employees, hopefully. You've probably got the customers, let's hope. But it's doing that extra bit to get the business to work and churn.
Yeah, I think one of the points there, JB, and we spoke about this, is also not to cut the service if you can afford to. Yeah, not to cut your products. People, customers are savvy these days, aren't they? They see straight through that. It's just, if you start putting a substandard product in, say, I don't know, sausage on a breakfast buffet or something like that, you put a 42% pork sausage instead of a 65, a sausage is a sausage, but people see straight through that, don't they?
Yeah, and I think the worst thing can be the fact you're portrayed as being a very healthy, food-conscious, caring, sustainable business, and your sausages are being a deep fat around the full of bread. It's having that tone. So if you want to look at costs, I'm fine with that, but it's smart thinking, isn't it? And engineering of food to be clever.
I mean, my advice would be never cut the quality. Yeah, it's basically, quality is absolute paramount. And I get basically, we need to cut the costs and, look at the cost, but there's a certain way to do it. Certainly don't cut your service and certainly don't cut your quality. Yeah. Anyway, let's bring back on. Somebody will tell me that PR is what is used when marketing collateral assets are limited. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, he's absolutely right, isn't he? Yeah, Let's move on. Yeah, Jason, put lid on the mixer. Yeah, but you put COVID and Brexit in it and get a new recipe. Yeah,
Jason probably knows I had one of the first thermo mixers in 1987. Okay, and a Paco Jet. You won't know what a Paco Jet is. And I often used to put it, try to get it to work without the lid on. And you could decorate the ceiling. It was all in my hair, but who cares? Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, no problem at all. JB, I'm just going to wrap this up. Bo Williams, here you go. The robots are coming.
Bert,
yeah.
Bert, you want it. He's the man. Bert, you're correct. Robots are coming.
Yeah. They're on the way, are they? Yeah, happy days. He's absolutely right, actually, isn't he? We also the champagne one and God knows what, and basically in production and God knows what. James, we've run out of time, so basically, thank you, sir. Thank you. It just leaves me to say thank you very much for your comments today, sir. Absolute gold as normal. Yeah, we thought we'd do 2, but we've just got 1 point that we discussed today as normal. So, thanks for that. Thank you all the guys that are basically listening. And JBs, thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you.